شریف ایران. من شهریار افشار هستم، میزبان شما در برنامه Politics 365. هر هفته ما یک گفتگوی جدید با شخصیت‌های برجسته سیاست، حقوق بشر، تجارت، تکنولوژی و اکتیویست‌های فعال در سراسر دنیا به توجه شما میرسانیم. اگر مایل هستین ما خوشحال میشیم پیامتون رو دریافت کنیم با تماس با 858 444 6506 یا info@politics365.com. با امید ایران آزاد بریم دنبال برنامه امروز. خب خوش آمدین دوستان به Politics 365. امروز یکی از مهمان خیلی برجسته و فعال گروهمون داریم آقای براین کالدرون تباتبایی، یکی از شهردارای شهر وست کووینا است. این برنامه به انگلیسی پخش میشه بعد از اینکه این به اصطلاح اینتروداکشن رو تمام کردم، اما میخواستم همه دوستان رو به اصطلاح دعوت کنم به این گفتگو، گرچه به انگلیسی تهیه شده. میخواستم نظرهای شما رو حتما دریافت کنم با اون شماره‌ای که اول برنامه دریافت کردین و ایمیلی که دریافت کردین. خواهش میکنم تماس بگیرین. ما همیشه از عقیده‌های شما خوشحال میشیم دریافت کنیم و تا اونجایی که میتونیم جواب سوالاتون رو بدیم. So let's go after Brian Calderon Tabatabai. Welcome to Politics 365. Such a great honor to have you. You are a councilman in the city of West Covina, and you're running for office. So we wanted to, and of course you're of Persian descent, which is my favorite thing about you. I'm just telling you right now.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
and I love speaking with Iranian Americans of Iranian American descent, people that are parents, lineage, or even there are Persian adjacent who are involved in public service and politics. I think that's really why I created this platform, is to encourage Iranian Americans to get involved in politics and public administration. And you have embodied and have done that in your career as a teacher and now as a councilman running for office. So tell us a little bit about how you got into public office. You had a day job like most people do in this business, and you wanted to get involved in public service to better your community in West Covina, and now you're running for office. So tell us how you got into public service, and then we'll talk about your candidacy.
Yeah, so I am an ethnic studies teacher during the day at Monte High School. And so during the pandemic, I was teaching remotely. And so, you get an insight into what's going on in the lives of your student in a way that was very different. And so during the pandemic, I had so many of my students were working, trying to help their families. They were working as Instacart delivery folks. They were working as essential workers. And then there was quite a bit of death also happening in the community. And so at that point, you kind of realize that you kind of rationalize that you're making a difference in the world, right? You're impacting all of your students and telling them to go out and make change. And I think I really felt like, no, that's not enough. I really need to do more. And teaching ethnic studies, we really got into a lot of those topics about the system, how the systems impact us. One of the things, we're doing this in English because I don't speak Farsi. The loss of language was something that really impacted myself, and it impacted a lot of my students. A lot of my students, Spanish-speaking homes or Cantonese-speaking homes. And so they also kind of are navigating this world where English becomes this language for accessing systems and success. Then you're losing, right? Some of my students were losing the ability to talk to family, not only talk to grandparents, but even talk to parents. And so those are things that I realized. Well, what can I do beyond the classroom to affect, right, change? And so I looked at what was happening. George Floyd was murdered. We actually, examined the whole entire thing in class as kind of it was all transpiring. And so, when I was at UCLA, I was very politically active in the issues that were going on. Affirmative action, Prop 209 was one of the major ones while I was in school. And so it kind of reignited a lot of that in me. I spoke at a few of the rallies, the Black Lives Matter rallies, and I had a few young people from the community of West Covina who I connected with, and at that point, we were like, you know what, we can do more in our community, and so I made the decision with my wife to run for city council. And this group of young kids, young people, let me put it that way, seniors in high school, first year college, ran my campaign, and we were elected. And again, that election really kind of opened my eyes that being in these spaces like city council, school boards, legislature, even the governor's office, is something that is accessible for someone who's a teacher, someone in the community, and there wasn't anything that that you needed beyond actually doing it, and that was a real, kind of not only eye opener for me, for my students now when I go into the classroom and I'm able to share all these, you know, spaces that I now occupy. It's really been empowering for them.
So basically, anybody can do it.
Yes.
You have a day job, you got responsibilities. You recognize the need in your community to be a voice for your community, and running for office kind of helped you accomplish that. And that was 2020, I think, right? When you got in
Yes.
to the council in West Covina. And how have you found your experience? Because one of the things I love, like I mentioned before, I love promoting public service for Iranian Americans, because it's such an important part of American life. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You got to get in there. And city council, one thing I learned after my 25 years in local government and my grad studies as an MPA was, it's the closest layer of government to the people. So, you could become state assembly and congressman and governor and senator and president. And every step, as much as this higher office, you lose touch with what's going on in your community. Whereas you're embedded in the community, you're working in the community. And now you're also serving another way. Not only are you a teacher, but you're also serving, and I assume it's a part-time thing. It's not a full-time, right? You have a full-time job, but then you basically are volunteering to be on the city council. So people need to understand how that works. You can have your day job and be on a city council somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's it is, part-time. But it again, when you're talking about serving the community, it is, being on that dais, it allows me to speak for a lot of residents in the community that did not have a voice before. And I think, again, when you're talking about, as an Iranian American, why it's important for us to be in those spaces, right? We occupy spaces in business, we occupy spaces in sciences, we occupy spaces in tech, but we also need to have a voice in the political space. And so I'm able to speak to issues that, again, others who don't have the same lived experience, or don't have the relationships that I have, aren't going to be able to speak to. And so I've had quite a few just, moments where the community, after I've shared issues from, again, my specific lens, that really opened their eyes. They just were not aware. And it wasn't that they were purposely trying to ignore or marginalize. It's just they had no clue.
Wow.
And that's why, having us in those spaces to speak and to share, and again, when people listen and then they start to understand, and then now when we move to more national politics, they can understand those in a way that was different.
Right. So you're still an educator.
Yes.
You didn't really change too much. You're educator by day, educator by night at city council meetings. So tell me a little bit. I mean, you mentioned this before the program started, but about your background, your parents. Were you born there? You're born here? How did your cultural upbringing play into this?
Yes. So my dad came from Iran in the late 60s as a student. And he met my mom, who's from Mexico, even though my mom's side of the family was born in Texas. My grandmother was born in Texas, and was actually sent back to Mexico during the Depression. And that's another story when we have more time.
Right.
But they met, got married in 1970. I have an older sister. And then I was born in East Los Angeles in 1977. At that time, my dad had returned to Iran and really was going to establish our home there. So in 78, my mom, myself, my sister, we go to Iran. That is where our life is going to be. My sister was in first grade, I believe. And then the events of 1978 and 79 occurred, the revolution. And my dad was able to get all of us back to the United States, was able to get most of his family to the United States. And we had that experience that, so many of us had. And so it really obviously changed the trajectory of my life, right? I was going to grow up in Iran. That was going to be my country. Farsi was going to be part of my life. But then when we returned to the United States, that wasn't part of us. And particularly when we moved back, we originally moved back to East Los Angeles, and then we moved to the San Gabriel Valley, where West Covina is. We moved to a space called Rowland Heights, where there was not really an Iranian diaspora there, right? So although I had family, and a lot of my family living on the west side, living in the San Fernando Valley, other than those interactions on holidays and things, I was not around Farsi, right? Now my dad would put on Persian TV on Sundays, and I could hear it in the background. So that was, part of the soundtrack of my life, was hearing the language off of the TV on Sunday or going to family gatherings. But it did not become part of my spoken language.
Right.
And
it happens, you
Mhm.
mentioned the change trajectory of your life. Very insightful observation. All of us have had change trajectories, right?
Yes.
We think our life is going to go one way, and the revolution, the past one, the 79 one, changed the trajectory of everybody's life here. And I think there's still people, Iranian Americans to this day, in LA, in Southern California, around the world, the diaspora, that are still impacted by that
Mhm.
original event, right? It's so many changes, so many regrets, so many loss of life, so many loss of property, and hope. Really, the death of hope is what happened in 79. Despite what the regime says, the hope changed. So everyone had to make a life in a new direction and start from scratch. And people that were in high status in Iran had to come, open a liquor store in the US,
Mhm.
right? Or drive a taxi, do anything they can to build a life. And luckily, as you put it, they've built a life, many of them in high status in this country, in the land of opportunity, doctors, lawyers, captains of industry and tech. It's really amazing. Every time when you talk about education, when I talk with American candidates, thank God they recognize the greatness of the diaspora and the diversity and what they've done, that they've accomplished the American dream here. When you unleash freedom and you allow it to prosper as we do in this
Mhm.
country, the Iranians, thank God, have managed to take advantage of that. But we're still not complete as a community when our homeland is suffering as it is. So I think any amount of public service that expatriates do, and if yourself, people, is and when you spend time in educating your colleagues and your community, that is a step forward
Yeah.
for the entire community. It's not just your little community in West Covina, but it's the entire movement is progressed one step further because you spend that time educating really the diversity. It doesn't have to be just Iranian diversity. Your background is, Mexico. I will just put a side note in there that I've been to Mexico City, I've been to Tehran, and it is amazingly similar in a lot of ways. I mean, both communities love food and family and togetherness and joy. And, just because, we're continents and oceans apart, that sense of happiness and joy that's embedded in the Iranian community is also embedded in the Latino community in Mexico that I've seen,
Oh,
that you're
definitely.
living.
Yeah, so to just share, so 79 and 80, as so much of my family members are coming from Iran. My grandfather had this home in Boyle Heights, and on Christmas we were all there, all together, Farsi, Spanish, right? No English happening, and yet it was. I talked to family members on both sides, and those memories are just so cherished, and they just remember how much love and welcoming and what an embrace that my grandfather had, and it's those things, and you could see, right, the connections between the communities, right? It is, the extended family so important, right? All the cousins, all the aunties, all the uncles and grandparents, and multi-generational, and taking care of each other, and the huge parties. It very much, right, that what it was. And without language, we still had those very loving experiences. And again, I think that's something too, being in Los Angeles, where both of these, right, both the Latino population and the Iranian population, right, they're so large, and they make such an impact. I think sometimes we don't understand how closely connected we are in so many of our cultural beliefs. And again, from a United States point of view, I think so many people just have a limited view of Iran in terms of, the hostages, and in terms of what is presented on television, on the media. And because, we do live so segregated, right? That's one of the issues, in the United States we are still trying to deal with, is our segregated communities, is without these interactions. And again, why it's so important for us to be in so many different spaces, to create these interactions so people can understand. And I think once they begin to create these relationships, then I think that impacts foreign policy,
Right.
right? It motivates, to make those changes in Iran, right? Because you understand that the people, right, what do they want? What do they believe? Well, they believe in those things, and why we thrive so much in the United States, right? Because it fits so much of our own values.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, Maya Angelou said we're more alike than not. And once you get over those stereotypical segregated viewpoints that unfortunately is embedded in American culture, because we're so bombarded with misinformation, disinformation, it's very easy to fall victim to a narrow point of view, which is the worst thing. So I think, getting back to our earlier point, it's really great that you are in public service, you are a representative in your city of West Covina, because your diversity and your life is such an attestment to the value of educating your peers in your community about the amazing diverse community that not only LA is in general,
Yes.
but your particular background being essentially a American, Mexican, Iranian. I mean, three of them.
Yes.
I thought being one hyphenated was a lot, being Iranian American, but you're, American, Mexican, Iranian. That's pretty awesome to have
Yeah.
go in three different countries essentially, and now especially being in public service. So in the minute we have left, what do you see for your future? Do you want to just continue on in the city council? Do you want to do more things in public service?
I am running for the state legislature. And one of the reasons is, I'm a teacher, and education is something that is very important to me. Especially I teach ethnic studies, and some of the things that are happening in terms of education are problematic, and I want to make sure that we include that our education system is very inclusive, right? So that way we do understand each other.
Right.
And so on the city council, education isn't part of what I can have impact on.
Right.
And it's why I'm looking to be part of the legislature, so I can also have a voice there. I've been a teacher for over 20 years. I think I have a lot to say and a lot to bring, and it's one of those areas that I really want to have an impact.
You do have a lot to bring. In the last few seconds, what is your website and the district you're running for?
Yes, it is briantabatabai.com. And I am running for Assembly District 48, which is in the East San Gabriel Valley, West Covina being the largest city in the district.
Fantastic. Brian Calderon Tabatabai, so wonderful to meet you. We wish you great success in your campaign. Please come back and see us soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.